Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Fractional Unfiltered. It is unfiltered. We're going to talk about the kind of the real scoop of what's going on in the world today. I am your host, John Arms, and with me today is the famous or infamous Taylor Crane. Taylor, we're super glad to have you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm curious to know why I'm infamous.
Well, online reputation, I tell you what, there's things that a person has to do to control that. I'm just kidding. I just made that up. I don't know that you're infamous or not, but
I certainly hope not.
so, but
But
I'm really,
thank you, John. Thank you for having me. I appreciate
really,
it.
really grateful you're here. For those of you listening, we're glad you're here as well. We are going to educate today on the rise of fractional. We're going to try to put a lens on what employers want and what's coming next. So we're going to take both a macro and a micro view today, and I'm going to grill Taylor as much as I can and pluck his brain on all of this. But before we do that, Taylor, please share a bit about you and what you're doing and the mission you're on for this whole fractional world.
Absolutely. Again, thank you, John, for having me. I appreciate it. And thank you for everyone joining, and especially those, a little shout out to those that have their cameras on. Cool. So my background, for those that don't know, my career has been spent in the tech startup ecosystem. I spent about 10 years as a PM, and then I started my first company in 2020. I sold that company in 2023, and after that, I was faced with what it is that I wanted to do next in my career, ready to start another company. I felt like the getting a full-time job somewhere else wasn't the right path for me, and so I fell into fractional work, and I spent about a year as a fractional head of product, working. My niche was like super early stage startups, 0 to 1, and my kind of tagline at the time was I work with non-technical founders in
Mm,
particular on 0 to 1 product development, just where I felt like somewhere where I felt like I was kind of had a unique vantage point. So I spent about a year as a fractional head of product, and one thing led to another. I mean, I always wanted to start my next company, or I knew I was going to start in the company at some point. I didn't know what it was going to be. I was kind of using fractional work as a way to explore and to also, potentially bootstrap, my next operation, which became fractional jobs. I launched fractional jobs exactly 2 years ago now,
2 years
uh,
ago to the day, to the day.
to the month,
Oh,
but
pretty
not to the
good. It's
day.
pretty
Yeah.
close.
Yeah. And yeah, at this point, it's the largest network of fractional executives in the US. And we work with startups and small businesses and nonprofits and more. And we help them hire fractional leaders from our network. And that's what I
Wonderful.
do.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So, that is your thing. That's your baby. And you've already talked about your mission in the past, but through all your efforts that you're doing here, how do how do you want to change the world here? What's kind of really driving you here, Taylor?
Yeah, so the mission of the company is to accelerate the fractional work movement, and that can mean many different things. I mean, it in part is recognition that like I don't think that I think the fractional work movement is inevitable. I don't think that I am in a place where I am
Sure.
creating it from scratch, right? It is going to happen. It is happening. All I want to be able to do is accelerate it, and the area where I identified as like maybe the biggest opportunity or one big way to help accelerate it is to create, the marketplace where I help
Mhm.
companies find and hire the right executives. And so that's all I'm doing. That's the
That's
goal.
great. That, as you know, that changes a lot of lives for the better, helps businesses for the better. And you're right, there is a certain amount. It does require people like you and I and others to nudge it along, but there certainly is a certain amount of inevitability to the fractional model. And sadly, there's also an inevitability to, I'm said that right word twice right now. That's amazing. That's a hard one to do. There's a certain amount of inevitability to the decline of W-2 and full-time. There's
Mm.
so much happening there right now. And I think I want to pick that apart a little bit later. But for the moment, so you've been doing this for a little bit. I'd love to hear a story from you. Tell me about the first time you saw a hire that you put out there work really well, when it clicked, oh, nice.
Oh man. Okay. So I can think of a few examples. I'm trying to think of the right story to tell. The first, okay, I mean, like The very first time it happened was the first hire that we made. So
Oh.
this is now rewind to, 2 years ago. I just launched Fractional Jobs. I had this instinct that, I could be super helpful in connecting, companies looking to hire fractional talents. I launched the site. Someone that I had met, a founder that I had met a couple years prior, saw it, and I guess at the time was in need of. We shaped it together, but it ended up being like a fractional head of data or a fractional head of data
Mm.
analytics for the company. And I was like, all right, amazing. Like, let me find you the right person. I did my thing. I came back with the candidates that we had at the time, which the whole network itself, the fractional jobs network, was maybe like 1,000 folks. So we didn't have a ton. Presented some candidates, and then immediately from there is when I started to realize that there was something really tangible here. The founder looked at the candidates and was just blown away by, and this speaks to the power of fractional, right? Was blown
Mhm.
away by the level of expertise, the seniority, and the willingness and desire to like jump into an early stage startup and get to
Mhm.
work. And then I think the relationship lasted like something like 9 months. They did a
Mhm.
lot of work together. He ended up hiring himself out of a role and found them, a full-time head of, I think it became data science. I forget the exact title.
Mhm. Yeah.
And yeah, I have many stories like that, but it's just one
Yeah.
example of like just the insight. I saw it in the founder's eyes, like, oh my God, like this actually is a thing. This can actually work. This can actually be helpful for my business.
The tumblers came into connection with each other. It all locked in together. So the founder was blown away. What words did they use? What did they tell you? Like, why was it so different than a hire or doing it themselves? Like, what'd you hear?
Well, I think like to be honest, like that example was 2 years ago. So I'm maybe struggling to remember the exact words used in that
Hmm.
instance. But I think like in times like it, I think the biggest surprise factor for founders in that situation is the sudden realization that like a major problem in their business that they've not been able to solve because of like full-time resource constraints suddenly becomes extremely solvable in a very flexible way, in a very cost-effective way, and it just becomes like a oh crap, like almost like why didn't I think of this
Why
sooner,
didn't I think
kind
about
of
this
moment.
before?
Yeah.
Hmm. Why didn't we do it this way before? And I see that in our coursework with our students too, is that they're like, oh my God, this is so different and I love it. And it's why doesn't everybody do it this way? And there's a lot to unpack there. I think a lot of it is just the norms we've attached to W-2 full-time work have become just so heavy.
Oh yeah.
And I think that weighs everybody down. Talk about that a little bit. Talk about that. Like, why is W-2 so painful right now? What do you think? What do you think is contributing to that?
I think like I can maybe the best way to answer this is my own reflections when I went from I did W2 work for about 10 years
Yeah.
and then started
Yeah.
doing fractional work
I like your
and
reflections. I've heard your
um,
reflections before. I love your
I
reflections. They're good
appreciate that.
reflections.
I think like for me personally, like doing fractional work felt like such a breath of fresh air. It felt like there are several reasons for that, but to me, for the first time, it felt like I was a partner to the founders that I
Ah,
was working with, as opposed
interesting.
to an employee. So it was much more of a partnership relationship than it was an employer-employee relationship, and I that like goes a really long way in terms of what kind of work you can do, the trust you have, the space you have to create success and create outcomes. And um, it was also like when when doing fractional work, like, you are a business owner, right? And so there is also just a context and mindset shift that you go through where you think of yourself now as a business owner. And um, I love the entrepreneurial spirit in general, so that was
Mhm.
empowering to me as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
That's
could, yeah.
that's a big one. The it's two business owners working together,
Right, yes.
and the I hear this a lot, and it's a word that it makes me just inherently uncomfortable. But people talk about the power structure.
Hmm.
W-2, there's a power structure, and there's an org chart, and it's top to bottom, and someone has a louder voice, and someone doesn't have a louder voice, and someone's more senior, and there's all of this power.
Yeah,
And then what I realize is I help people find work and teach them what this is. Like you get to skip over all of that because the owner doesn't want to have a power structure. They want their pain relieved.
yeah,
And then the provider, the fractional provider, they don't want it either. But in the status quo, we've said, well, there needs to be a power structure. We need to have a power structure. That's what works here. And I think it's just maybe it's aging out. That's not very effective.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I hope it's aging out. I think like and like I probably unpack all the reasons why it was created in the first place, but I think that is a huge benefit of fractional work. Is it really it breaks that apart, and yeah,
It breaks apart that. So, okay. So to get our feet on the ground, this is important that we help people understand definitions a little bit.
sure.
And Taylor and I have both been in this industry for quite some time, so we're just a little farther ahead than everybody else. But Taylor, if we could hear from you, how you define what is fractional work, what do we exactly mean when we say it? And then how is it distinct and different from full-time consulting freelance? How do you talk about that?
Sure. So my definition is that fractional work is part-time work, typically paid on a monthly retainer and performed by expert. The monthly retainer part just implies sort of a long-term ongoing relationship that I think is inherent to fractional work. And the performed by experts in their field is my way of sort of drawing a line or like defining like what type of talent or what type of work gets done. And I think there are some folks that will define it as like, you must be executive level, must be C-suite
Sure.
specifically, which I
Mhm.
think is fine. But I define it a bit more broadly as just being an expert in your field, because I think you don't need to be necessarily C-suite to be seen as an expert and to do expert level work.
Agreed.
So that's the
Agreed.
definition. Yeah.
You said a key word there, retainer. Why is that part of your definition? Why is the retainer built in there?
Yeah, so I say typically paid on a monthly retainer because I think there are other compensation structures that can happen. Hourly rates are not uncommon either. I could talk more about that, but the thing with the monthly retainer is that it implies an ongoing nature to the work, and it also like I think like it in some ways feels similar to how a company would pay a salary. You think of
Hmm.
salaries in terms of yearly rate, of course, so this is a different time scale, but like, and I think it's important because I think like from the hire and the company mindset, I think we want the fractional leader to feel like they're part of the team, like all other team members, including the ones that are full time and paid a yearly salary. This fractional is paid a monthly retainer because that's how fractional work works, but it's not so different.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the education that we give on that is exactly what you said. Is it speaks to the partnership. It speaks to the longevity, for sure. It certainly speaks to the value. Like when you're on a retainer in a fractional way, you're a quarter to a third the cost of a full-time person, so it makes the math very easy. But I think it's also helpful in that it gets us out of that time-based value mindset, which I think has been one of the struggles in our industry is, I get it where people go rate to time. What's your hourly rate? How
Yeah.
many hours do you need? What are the hours, scope. And I think that gets us away from the value. Like the value is in your, like, what did you say? The expert and their wisdom applying against the problem. And it just doesn't seem like hours fit that well. I've always struggled with
Mm,
the hourly thing. Like the hourly rate should be high. It's typically around 200, $250 an hour,
right.
but I feel like that shrinks people inside a smaller box as opposed to elevates them into everything they can do for a client. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think a lot of thoughts on that. I think like not talking in terms of hourly rates is helpful when we're talking about senior leadership, right? Where like micromanaging on individual hours just feels less, just
Hmm.
somehow less relevant, right? And sort of just like not in line with the partnership idea that we talked about. And so the monthly retainer, I think, helps with that. Also, the monthly retainer helps fractionals build their own business. It helps them lock in a client, let's say month by month, and think about like what their revenue or quote unquote their salary looks like. And so it creates stability, for the fractional worker. Whereas
Hmm.
if you're talking purely in hourly rates, and the client ends up not using the hours that you were expecting to give to them, and therefore you make a lot less money in that month than you were expecting, it just creates a lot of friction to doing
Hmm.
fractional work successfully, that I think can be avoided when you move towards a monthly retainer model.
That's I think that's a big factor in our industry. You said an important word there is friction. I feel like fractional helps us, if anything else, just reduce so much friction that has become built in.
Yeah.
On that, where do you see friction being relieved in the fractional model?
Where do I see friction being? So like what areas do I find that the fractional work model, helps relieve friction? Is
That's right.
that,
Yeah, yeah. Or just avoids it altogether. Avoids it altogether.
hmm. I think, well, like let's start with an obvious one, I think, just like the hiring process in general. So like
Oh, sure.
the process of hiring, let's say a full-time CMO, I think, many of us probably on this call can
Hmm.
imagine what that looks like. And to hire a fractional CMO, the time scale is compressed significantly, so you can move much quicker. But maybe more importantly, the decision is less risky for the company. It's a much more flexible relationship, right? That can scale up, can scale down, and can change. And so it like so much of the frictions around like going through the process of finding the right full-time, let's say CMO,
Hmm.
is immediately removed. Just like the feeling that like, oh my God, I have to nail this hire
Yeah.
perfectly. And so I
Hmm.
have to interview a ton of folks. I have to put them through very lengthy interview processes. I check every single box. I have to, and with respect to fractional work, you can meet a few folks, find one that you think is a good fit, get started the next day,
Yeah.
work together for a month, decide it's going super well, continue the relationship from there, and it's just like so much of that friction is removed. So
So
that's one example.
yeah, it's a perfect one. The first part you just described, they're like, that is so stressful to go through that. Oh, I got to get the right person, and I'm worried about it. And we've got compliance things. It's like I feel like it's become just too big of a bear for most businesses. It's like, oh God, it's just exhausting. So it's the friction or the stress is there. Let me get your take, or let's sort of back out on the macro here. You're in front of clients every day, I imagine, right? Something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so you're a great focus group for what is needed on the other side of things. So let's talk about that. What do you see driving the adoption of fractional on the client side? Talk about that if you could.
Yeah, so I think I can think of a few different ways to answer this. If I had to summarize like what companies are looking for the most, it's finding someone who's been there, done that for a specific problem area or specific just, area that can come into their company and tell them what needs to be done and get it done for them. So it's
Mhm.
like, if I'm a business owner, it's like I have this problem area in the business, whether it's HR related or marketing related or finance related, what have you.
Mhm.
And if I can find someone that is already an expert, that knows what needs to be done, that's done it before, that can
Mhm.
just come in and do it for my company so that we can level up. I
Mhm.
think that's like the simplest. Um,
They see it. They see it. They see
yeah,
that my pain can go away quickly.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's a way of like it's a painkiller.
The
It's
painkiller.
certainly a way
Yeah.
of looking at it. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody listening, just like you're all aspirin, you're all Tylenol. You're don't go any deeper. You're not cocaine, you're not fentanyl, but you are a pain relief in a lot of ways. Let's stay in that space if you could. The pain relief. I think there's a lot of dialogue that I hear in class about, well, how can I do this if clients don't know what it is, like if they can't name it, and I don't think that's the right question to ask. Every year you place all these people in fractional, and I have to believe that most of them couldn't tell you what fractional is, but yet they still do it. Could you talk about that?
There's a mix actually. It's interesting. Like,
Hmm.
I'm in a bit of a unique position here running fractional jobs because in
Hmm.
order for me to get exposure to and work with a client, they
Hmm.
have to have discovered fractional jobs in some capacity and like want to work with me and want to help. And so I think that does filter things a bit more towards the kinds of companies and the founders that already know fractional work in some capacity and are kind of ready. Like I actually
Hmm.
don't spend a ton of time convincing founders and hirers of the fractional work model from
They have
scratch.
knowledge.
They have some, and it's again, it's not. I don't think this is necessarily indicative of like what the true sample looks like because I think
Hmm.
like when I was doing fractional work, I don't think a single one of my clients knew what fractional was
Mine
before.
either. Mine either.
Right. So like I think that's probably is the more common story, but my vantage point is a bit unique because in order for me to work with a client, they have to like have discovered fractional jobs in some way. And so they're probably a little bit used to the language. I do spend some time talking to companies that are either skeptical or unsure, or
Hmm.
like they talk about they'll say like I need a part-time CFO without using the word
Hmm.
fractional, or I need an expert head of sales to get my team on track, right? And I'm like, okay, that's a fractional head of sales. Like, let's talk about what that looks like
Hmm.
without them using the language. So yeah, I
Do
guess
they
that's my vantage point.
do they do they stumble on the word fractional, or do they just kind of they don't care? It's not that important to solving their pain. What do you think?
Definitely don't think there's one stumbling block actually.
Oh, what is it?
The stumbling block is so when some companies think of or hear the phrase fractional executive,
Hmm.
they think someone that's not going to be doing the work, someone that's going to be telling me what needs to be done, but not doing the work. So like
Hmm.
the number one objection that I hear from founders and from business owners is, okay, I'd say I need a head of sales to fix my, let's say fix my team or build the sales playbook, et cetera. I do not want someone who's going to tell me what to do and not do it themselves. I need someone who can get their hands dirty and do the work. I want a head of sales, and even I'm willing to pay for the person like at their rate, but I want a
Yeah.
head of sales that can pick up the phone. I want a head of sales that can send the emails and actually book the meetings and close the deals. And so some folks, when they hear fractional executive, they think someone that's not going to be doing that, which
Hmm.
is wrong. I know this very much to be true. Like I would imagine most fractional executives are hands-on doing the work, but it is something that I commonly have to explain to
So
founders.
it's an interesting mix because I have found two kinds of founders is that one you just described, and it's more of a budget scenario, is I don't have the money for a head of sales and then a sales team. So I
Hmm.
need a player coach. And
Hmm.
that's a thing. We have to
Yep,
say that that's
definitely.
real, and that goes
Yep.
across all roles. I have had others say, I don't want a, 47-year-old veteran answering freaking emails or writing HR manuals. That's not their value. So some people get the higher value stuff, and others haven't drawn that distinction. I think, though, in all cases, and this will get it, that was funny, but in all cases, this I think goes to where it's going is so we're going to talk about the magic word now. We're going to talk about AI.
Hmm.
If we could, is the tactical doing of things keeps getting chewed up by AI. I contend, and I teach this in classes, you have to stay in your highest value zone because AI is going to eat up all the doing. What are you
Mm.
seeing on the hiring side of that? Where is AI sort of flowing into their world, and how is that affecting the fractionals that you put out in the world?
Yeah, I think the AI conversation, we can break it up into like what's happening today and like what do we think might be happening, in the
Hmm.
future. I think today where I think AI is most relevant is in companies and hirers, founders telling me that they want to hire a fractional XYZ that is, for lack of a better way of saying it, AI native. So they're using the AI tool, the current AI tools, they're staying up to date, they know whatever function area they're in, they know how to leverage today's AI to get more done faster. Because
Hmm.
I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? As a business owner,
Right.
that's music to your ears, right?
Hmm.
So that's where I think it's most relevant today. I am not, despite all the conversations we hear online, I am not yet having companies come to me and say, I have a team of AI agents that we've built that just needs someone to manage them. That's not happened yet.
You think that's coming soon?
It might be coming. I don't know how soon. Actually, there actually is one exception, which is kind of a funny story. I had a client come to me to hire a fractional CTO,
Hmm.
and it's because he's built an entire software product with his team, about three people on his team, all business ops focused, all former consultants, never written a line of code in their life. And they've been using Claude Code to build their software, and it's getting enough traction that they like are starting to scale it and running into scaling problems. And so
Hmm.
they wanted a fractional CTO that actually, is an expert, right? And
Hmm.
specifically an expert in Claude Code and can basically like set up the right infrastructure and the right processes and the right guidance so that their team of non-engineers can start contributing, to the code, or not start, but continue contributing to the code base and building it out. That was a very interesting use case, but that's kind of the exception to the rule.
Yeah, that's Sam Altman would be music to his ears. I think he's predicting I don't know, huge swaths of the workforce that we call people work now is moving its way into AI at one would say an accelerated pace. And
Fair.
one of the reasons for that is you want this might blow you away. The amount of money behind AI coming into work, currently invested money is $230 billion.
Yeah.
That's a lot of sauce behind the
Yeah.
effort. That's a lot of people saying, and what's its job? AI's job literally is to take human work. Like
Hmm.
that's its purpose. That's why it exists. That's its effect on the marketplace. Oracle laid off 30,000 people this year already because AI is going to do what they used to have those 30,000 people do. So it's coming. My contention on that is it is going to bring into even sharper relief the need for the things we teach in class: wisdom, acumen, leadership, judgment, pattern recognition. If AI is going to do, you had just said it, like if you are a player coach and the player part goes away because of AI,
Hmm.
that leaves the coach.
Yeah.
That's what's left there. And it's really, really important that people get that and understand that. Well, we could talk forever about AI, but I'm going to pause on that because other people are having conversations. Have you noticed that? Other people are having conversations about AI? I've noticed it a little bit.
I've read one or two
I've seen it.
posts.
I've seen a couple things. I've seen a couple things in TikTok, I think,
Yeah.
about it. Yeah, yeah. But a little bit of future thinking, what do you think's going to happen in our space, in our industry? Where's the puck going right now? Where do you think it's going on the hiring side? What do you see happening or changing in terms of companies choosing talent in a non-W2 way? What are you seeing there? What's your crystal ball tell you?
Yeah, I think maybe the AI conversation aside, because that's obviously a
Yep.
very maybe a big component of that. I think a couple of things I want to say.
Hmm.
Broadly speaking, so like what we'll call like flexible talent solutions, of which fractional is one model, but like hiring freelance as well, hiring gig
Hmm.
workers as well, all fits into the same category. I think that continues to, to be a trend that is going to accelerate. I think for a lot of reasons. I think that with respect to fractional work specifically, the way that I see the world and the way that I see the fractional work world evolving is from the hirer point of view and putting myself into their shoes and trying to see what they see and how I think their mindset is going to be evolving over time. So to get specific, and I wrote a blog post about this at some point. I have I had this idea in my head of like three different levels of fractional hiring from the
Hmm.
founder or from the business owner's point of view. Level one, level two, and level three. Maybe there's even more than that. And I think we're at level one right now. I'll define what it is in a second. So I think
Yeah.
we're at level one right now, and I think like we're starting to enter level two, but we're not even close to level three. And level one is, again, think about it from the founder or the business owner's perspective. Level one is I have a burning need in my company, some kind of problem needs to be solved. And my first instinct is to find someone externally to solve that problem for me. So like a
Okay.
great example of this is finance strategy, right? If you're a founder, if you're a business owner, you're looking at your small team and you have a burning need for better finance strategy work, you are almost certainly not going to be trying to do it yourself unless you have a finance background, right? But if you have a sales
Right.
background, if you have a marketing background or a technology background, you're not going to do it yourself. You're going to look externally to find that person. The same, I think, goes in a lot of ways for from well, actually, engineering is a perfect example, right? If you're a non-technical founder, right, and you have a burning need for a like technical strategy, you are not going to try and do it yourself. You're going to try and find someone externally. And so this is why, at least from my vantage point, which admittedly is I think is a pretty good sense of the market, the most popular roles today are fractional CFO roles, fractional CTO roles, and fractional CMO roles. So that's level one. Again, is like you're
Hmm.
like realizing that the need is external and to find someone externally to bring it in.
That's
Level,
level
le
one. And this isn't a blog that we'll go pull the blogs
yeah,
out.
I'll
Okay,
have to find it.
great. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll pull it out and we'll put it out to the world. Okay, level one is looking external for pain relief. Gotcha.
Level two fractional hiring is when you have a problem in the company that needs to be solved, but your instinct as a founder is initially to try and solve it using existing resources. So a great example of this is operations or product. So like if you're a founder and your operations are a mess in your company, your first instinct is probably to try and solve those operational messes yourself or find someone in the company who can solve them for you.
Hmm.
Product is a great example as well. If you have a gap with respect to product strategy in your organization, most often what you're going to do is you're going to tap your CTO to play or to wear the product hat as well, right? So this is you looking internally to try and solve the problem. Your first instinct is not necessarily to hire externally. But look at the CTO example. Like, I mean, at least personally, I think that it would be a lot better for a founder to hire a fractional head of product than to try and take their full-time CTO, divide their
Hmm.
attention, and have them play the role of product, especially if they don't have a product background, right?
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
that's the level we're at right now, which is founders are, I think, starting to realize that because fractional work and fractional leaders exist, they can bring someone in fractionally to solve this product problem. They didn't like it used to be that they have to hire a full-time head of products, but they don't
Hmm.
have to do that anymore. Like there's this new option available to them.
Right.
And so I think that's what they're starting to realize. And I
Hmm.
think so like kind of a long way of saying I think that's where we're at right now
Level
is level
two.
two. And then
Hmm.
just a quick brief into level three. Level three is like hiring fractional leaders where there really is no good full-time equivalent for that role. So you don't even
Hmm.
have the mental model for knowing that it could exist. So or it's very, very niche, like a fractional head of user experience or a fractional, head of public
Legal,
policy.
maybe.
Yeah, legal or head of public
Hmm.
policy, like stuff
Hmm.
that's like so far away from what you would think of in order to
Hmm.
ability to hire. So you don't even realize it's an opportunity at all.
Hmm.
And so yeah, that's
Those three levels, and we're somewhere between one and two.
exactly. That's
Yeah.
what I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard something from someone I've been talking to is on the outside of fractional coming in and working their way there, and had a great conversation about so much, of the problem with growing a company comes from the inside.
Yeah.
And I think when you had just described in level two is I'll get the head of tech to work on product. I mean, that's a total mismatch, right? That'd be
Right.
like saying I'll have a dentist work on foot surgery. It just doesn't make any sense. But if you look, well, you can look at it through the lens of, but that's going to save us money because we
Right.
can't afford it. Well, now, of course, you can because you can.
Exactly correct. Exactly correct. Yes.
The economic barrier has come down for that. But the amount of chaos that comes from just that decision, we're going to do it ourselves. We're going to put our head of tech on product or HR or some of the
Whatever
other
it is.
things.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, right. And that's actually going to delay their growth. Um, I'll give a little bit of a shout out. This person I've been talking to, she's on the call. Her name is Erica Till, and she calls it "There's avoidable chaos." There's avoidable chaos, and that says it so well. So speaking of that, Taylor, as you're with clients, like how much chaos do you see on the inside of companies when you're in there? Like how much is there? What's it without knowledge of it? Talk about that a little if you could.
John, you
Because I know
broke
all
up.
clients have their worlds completely figured out perfectly, right? It's all smooth as can be.
John, you'd broken up at least for me there, but I think what you're asking is like when I'm talking to clients,
Yeah.
and just like seeing inside their business a bit and seeing how I,
How
I
much
don't know that
chaos is
I,
there?
I don't know that I have like a particularly smart answer here, but short answer, like plenty of chaos. I think in my full-time career, I started like over time. I think probably all of us have gone through this where like once you're like 10, 15 years in, you start being like, oh, actually companies are kind of just always chaos. Like this is just kind of
Yeah.
what it is. It's not like the company you're at's uniquely
Right.
chaotic versus other, although I'm sure there is, it's a
Hmm.
spectrum. So yeah, I talk to founders every day now and I get to learn about their business and
Hmm.
it's super, it's actually an amazing thing for me selfishly to be able to do just to see in so many businesses. But
Hmm.
yeah, every founder is running, not every founder, but most founders are running around like a chicken with their head cut off, trying to like put out fires and solve problems and like,
Hmm.
make a dollar's, stretch more than a dollar should be stretched.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
I mean, it's the natural state of most businesses. Growth requires discomfort. There is no growth. It doesn't exist without discomfort. And growth is moving from one state to another
Yeah.
constantly. So of
Yeah.
course there's going to be chaos. The thing I teach in class, when I talk about this working with clients is I don't think you can have enough empathy for that. I really don't.
Ooh.
And I think this is one of the challenges is when you come from the full-time world and it's been maybe a toxic environment, or a chaotic environment, and you form opinions about that. Like, oh, you jackasses are doing it so wrong. You
Yeah,
form an
totally.
opinion about that, but what you tend to realize over time, once you're serving them in a fractional way as a partner, it's like, oh, I should be empathetic here because it's freaking hard
Oh yeah.
to run a business. And empathy is one of the greatest superpowers as a fractional, I think. And I'd love to hear what you think are the superpowers of fractionals. A
Well,
couple.
I think actually before I even get there, I have like a mini hot take that you just reminded me
Yeah.
of that I want to share, which is like we talk a lot about how fractional leaders are experts in their field, right? They know they've been there, done that, they know what needs to be done, and they come into companies to solve those problems. We say that, and that is true. However, it does sometimes create a problem where a
Mm,
founder hires a fractional executive, let's say it's marketing or finance, whatever it is. They come in, and the fractional executive acts like they know everything and they have
mm,
seen it all before. They know what needs to be done. Just listen to me, it'll be solved, etc. And they're talking to a founder that spent like 5 years trying to solve these problems already and like is deep in the space and is looking at this fractional leader like come on, like what do you come on, have some
mhm.
like you
Yeah.
say empathy for the fact that like I've
Yeah.
been working on these problems for 5 years already. And
Yeah.
I just wanted to call that out because like yeah, there I think there is a training component there around empathy that I think would go a long way for fractional leaders to even just bond with
Mhm.
the business owners more deeply.
Yeah.
And I think yeah, I think it would be super helpful if more people did that.
That's a that's a mindset shift, and it's human. Again, one another thing we talk about in class is, I think in all cases in life, if you leave your ego at the door, you're going to do incredibly well. I
Hmm.
think if you
Hmm.
carry your ego in the way we think about ego, I think if you carry it with you, it's probably going to cause more problems than solutions. But I get it because again, the corporate world says have an ego. It sort of rewards ego in a lot of ways. In this world, absolutely does not.
Yeah.
So leaving your ego, I think, is a superpower. Being empathetic. What are other superpowers do you think make for a great fractional? I mean, I don't think it's like, so fine. You worked in agriculture, you come from sales. Those aren't superpowers, those are realities. But what do you think about superpowers like that really make them strong and helpful?
Two that come to mind, I'm sure there's many more. One is pattern matching, and the other is context switching. So
Mm,
pattern matching, just the ability to like having seen so many reps at different companies full time, fractionally, just be able to see and quickly identify like what are the highest priority areas to focus on. What should this company be doing to in order to find the success they need, et cetera. So that's pattern matching, and then context switching is well. I guess just that, but it's, you're working with three, four clients at a time and the ability to very quickly switch your mindset and like your sort of your what you're thinking about from client to client. This was a point of pride for me when I was doing fractional work.
hmm
Like different fractional leaders approach this in different ways. So, some fractional leaders have like one day, they like each client gets one day a week, let's say, or like different hour blocks, etc. And I think it's totally fine. My personal approach was I am going to work for all my clients all the time, like throughout the day. And
hmm
so I could be doing deep work for one client, and then another client pings me on Slack, and I'm immediately responding to that client, and then going back to the deep work. That was just something that but anyway, like I think some amount of context switching is critical because founders and business owners want to feel like they have your attention and they have the
hmm
best of your of your brain because it is what they're paying for. um and yeah, the inverse
So
is you can see how the inverse is problematic, I suppose.
yeah, yeah, and those are definitely skills to understand about yourself and skills to develop. We're never done learning. We never are. What worked in corporate and W-2 does not live in this world. It doesn't lift and carry over exactly, which is, I think, one of the more interesting things about it. The again, back to what clients see in the macro picture. Um, have you tell me this is a little storytelling. Have you had anybody work themselves out of a client relationship? And if so, how did that happen?
Do you mean work themselves out successfully or unsuccessfully, like as in like it was a
Uh,
failure?
well, it certainly gets more clicks if we talk about the failure part, but both are good. Both are good, right? So let's talk about unsuccessfully. Like, where did they stumble? Where did they trip? What did they fuck up? But then on the other, maybe successfully. Like, maybe we could talk about both if you don't mind.
I think so starting with the unsuccessful ones, like there's two. example, not specific. I won't give specific examples,
No
but two
names,
like
no
things
names.
that come to mind.
Mhm.
The first is just didn't live up to expectations. So promised the world in the pitch phase and then just was not able to deliver. I think this particularly comes true when the type of role is more measurable. So like sales would be a very, very obvious one where like it's just kind of you can kind of just see it there.
Mhm.
But there are other examples as well. I think uh, a, se- a second, I'm actually picturing a specific example right now. A second one is the cultural issues related
Mm.
to a fractional feeling like they're the expert and should be listened to at all times. And like, what does this founder know? Kind of mindset, which I think is so problematic. And and then I think that the third one is a combination of like I'm not sure. Sometimes it's the business owner's fault, and sometimes it's well, not nobody's fault, but it's sometimes it's like I kind of like uh, um, basically what it is like the tension between having someone fractionally but needing
Mm.
someone full time.
Sure.
And so sometimes this is the business owner miscalculating what their need is and thinking that they can get away with a fractional CMO for 10 hours a week, but actually it's a 40-hour a week job and there's just, there's no way around it, in that
Yeah.
case. And that creates, a lot of tension that
Sure.
can be tough to manage. Yeah.
That would be that would be either wishful thinking, unicorn, or lack of clarity that could create that. I
Right.
always coach. You have to go in really, really clear on the problems you're going to solve and the pain that you're going to relieve. And if you can stay in that space and not get pulled too far out of it, you'll have your client forever. But
Yeah.
you do have to be very, very clear. Speaking of that, talk about how when you onboard in your world, we teach people how to self-onboard. It's, Voyager use teach you to fish, all of that. But what does onboarding look for you? How is the right way when you put a fractional in front of a client that goes well in the first, week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? Talk about that.
So yeah. So a note on with respect to the fractional jobs in the process, once we introduce the client to the fractional leader, we do get out
Mhm.
of the way from there. And so
Okay.
I'm not like formally speaking, I'm not involved in that, that onboarding phase, and it's the reasons why I can talk about it.
Sure.
But and so I can think back to like when I was doing fractional work, what my onboarding looked like. It's actually this is an area of fractional work that although I've spent time thinking about, I've not spent a lot of time writing about. And for me, writing is thinking, and so
For
I guess
sure.
like I don't know that I have like a really great framework for this. Definitely like you talk about superpowers, right? So like a very big superpower of a fractional leader is ability to onboard super quickly and start adding value, like even
Hmm.
within the first week. I think is critical. How that gets done, I think, is so dependent on what function area we're talking about, what industry we're talking about, what kind of business we're talking
Hmm.
about, what kind of fractional we're talking about, et cetera. And so
Sure.
I don't have a better answer other
Yeah.
than like it's probably every case by case, but speed
Sure.
is of the utmost importance, I
You,
guess.
you definitely have to get to pain relief soon. And it's funny you say that. I think by writing and write by thinking as well.
Yeah.
And most of that turns into coursework or material for our Ask John AI or some level of education. But we're on the same wavelength. Just this week, we have these course companions. So in our AI, we have all of our courses. So there's a lot of help there. But I wrote a companion about the first 30 days. And so people could envision themselves to understand what those first 30 days, what that onboard looks like. Like
Yeah.
you have the benefit of talking to customers. I have the benefit of talking to fractionals all day, every day. So I get to see what works and what doesn't and all that kind of stuff. And what is super clear is when you define it, when you own it, it goes incredibly well. If you're waiting to be
Hmm.
told, it goes really, really poorly.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah. Um, a little bit off of fractional, but not so much. Are you a big reader? Are you a big reader?
I'm a big reader of content online, but not traditional books. So I'm not often picking
Okay.
up a book, but I read a lot of content online.
Who are you following? And let's share that with the world because there's something about what people follow that is really interesting. So, is there any particular economist or plot podcast that you think is really useful for this world?
My favorite writer, and it is quite topical because he writes a lot about the future of work. I'm just looking up, I wanted to find a link that I can paste. Is a man named Dror Poleg. I'm going to paste it in the chat
Ooh,
right now.
please do. That's a tough one to spell.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to. I wanted to. So I just pasted his like, I guess his personal website in the chat. He writes a lot about the future of work. He used to write a lot about real estate, and then started writing about real estate in the context of remote work, and then just started writing
Mhm.
about remote work, and then just started writing about the future of work in general. It's quite interesting. And I just find that whenever I'm reading his writing, it resonates so strongly as like a prediction into the future for me. I'm like, this makes sense to
Mhm.
me. This is where I think the world is going. He talks a lot about, he does not talk about fractional work specifically, but he talks a lot
Mhm.
about concepts related to like the portfolio career and
Mhm.
that I think are very relevant to what we're seeing in the fractional work world. So yeah, I love his writing.
Drawer Polig. Drawer Polig podcast. We'll have to dial into it. I can't believe I haven't met him. And I can't believe he didn't mention my name. I'm hurt, Taylor. I'm hurt.
Sorry. I wanted to come up with someone that wasn't so on the nose.
That's good. I'm just pulling your leg. That matters. I think if there's one thing I can tell people to succeed here is to be in a constant state of learning. It is. I think that's the hard part about the W-2 world. It said you got to your place, you're there, now coast until you retire. I think that's the most dangerous thinking that exists. It just brings your value down more and more every day. So thank you for sharing who you like to follow because that helps. That helps people learn more. That's for sure. So some of the going back into the future thinking a little bit, some of the predictions right now coming out of Harvard Business Review and Yale and some of these places that are doing finally doing some research on fractional is there's some predictions that are saying, by the end of 2027, I think we're looking at being a 60% independent workforce. So fractional is a big chunk of that. And another way to look at that is right now there's 70 million 1099 people in the United States. All the other workers are W-2. And that's about to flip. Where it's not quite at half. 70 is half of 140, but it's on its way there. But it's growing at a 10, 12% CAGR every year. Macro, what do you think happens when I do think it's going to happen? What does work look like when that day comes? When 60% of the people in a building are flexible and independent, all of that. What's your thoughts there?
I yeah, like I don't feel like an expert here, but I I think it's very exciting that like that future that you're painting, and it's one that I've certainly thought about. I um I think I'm an entrepreneur by not by trade, I guess, but like I have a like I'm an entrepreneur, whatever. You get the point. Like and like I think I love that. I love that type of work, and I think that folks taking more control over their careers by being independent is very beneficial. I think like, in some ways it uncaps your earning potential, which I think is
Yep.
amazing. Like there's just so many benefits to it, and the breakup or the like the destruction of like the employer employee
Hmm.
concept, I think is overall, although scary and like kind of probably weird at times, and like will have some second order consequences, I think is largely a very exciting thing. And it puts more, it shifts the power balance back to the worker much more than
Hmm.
historically. And I think that's amazing. And so I'm very much looking forward to that. And I think my work here in accelerating the fractional work movement is
You're
part
helping that.
yeah, partly driven by just an excitement for more people to take more control over their careers and their income and break away from I don't want to make it so bad, but like the
Status quo.
yeah, that's a better
Yeah.
way of saying it. Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
go
Status quo.
with the prison metaphor.
People will have their own versions of that, that's for sure. They'll iterate how they feel about that. But I think you're right. This status quos need to break. I mean, that's how we grow and evolve. But I contend our natural state is independence, not captured. Not. I think
Yeah.
our natural state, and certainly, it's if you take a long arc look at that, our country was founded on freedom, of course, being independent from something that felt a little overbearing. And listen, we didn't start out as employees. Like if you went to 1776, everybody was 1099. I don't even know
Yeah,
if we had
fair.
taxes back
That's
then,
funny.
but everybody was independent, right? That is the nature. I think it's the nature. Sure, they were blacksmiths and bakers and all of that, but we've evolved into something that I think has, in many harmful ways, diminished the power of the independent spirit. And that's what I like that when I want to get people in fractional, but that's why. Because I think it makes for strong, I think it makes everything stronger. Um, so before we close on a couple technical questions, I want to do a little bit of service work here. For those of you who are joining and listening, our guest is Taylor Crane. And Taylor, people can find you at.
Oh, sure. I'm on LinkedIn at Taylor Crane. Pretty easy on Twitter. At Tay Crane, Tayk
Uh-huh.
Crane.
Great.
And then the website is fractionaljobs.io.
Great connection to make, great person to follow, great environment to look in. We have our own little commercial. We have our the reason this is timely. We have our next cohort that starts tomorrow, our next 5 week program, and which isn't limited to 5 weeks. It starts in 5 weeks, but then the AI and the community and the marketplace, it all extends for the rest of your life. So a couple of commercials there. Let's talk about technology. If we could, what technology do you think is super relevant to fractionals today and employers today that we weren't thinking about before fractional became so big?
Oh
Okay, we have to
man.
say LinkedIn. Like that's the layup one,
Oh
right?
yeah,
LinkedIn
I guess
matters.
so. That's very love hate with LinkedIn, but it's
Yeah,
certainly true. What technology? I mean, I don't want to say the most obvious one, which is all the
sure.
LLMs that we're
No, you can
all
say that. I
accustomed
think
to at
that
this point.
matters.
Um,
Is there a
yeah.
particular LLM that comes to mind for you that's helpful for the fractional practitioner?
Um, I don't know if I have a good answer to be honest.
They're just all good. Well, I think that
Yeah,
answer is going to reveal itself
your
over
LLM
time.
of choice. Yeah. Also, it
Yeah,
changes weekly. Like it's just I can't even keep up.
yeah, yeah. It's amazing. There are many. I'm seeing a lot of, and I use a lot. There's one called Ella, which is great for fractional marketers, but I'm seeing a lot of tech coming in to serve our category, and
Yeah,
that's a good.
I'm seeing more and more of it, which is cool. I think like I'll be interested to see like what fractional specific software gets built over
Mhm.
time. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, it's super interesting. One last thing before we go, as we're getting to the top of the hour, one of the things when we talk about work in general, we talk about benefits, we talk about 401k, we talk about the gym membership I had with the company. How do you have those conversations with employers and people? Because I know it's a big thing on their mind. How do you talk about that?
Yeah, definitely a big thing. Fractional Jobs has a resource that we call the toolkit, which has recommendations for handling your back office and accounting, handling your healthcare, handling your 401k, which if these things are done correctly, it actually creates value, even more value for you
Mhm.
than W-2 life, with the exception of healthcare, because healthcare is kind of like it's the Achilles heel,
Yeah, it's the big one in America.
W-2 healthcare is just undefeated right now, unfortunately.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
there are still an increasing number of options that I think are can be helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good. Well, we're watching it shape itself in real time. We have the same thing. We've got a burgeoning marketplace where we've identified get this and see if you believe this or not. There's 30 different things that you lose when you lose your job. You don't just lose the
Oh,
paycheck.
yeah.
There's typically 30, and we call those the but what abouts.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
But
Yes,
what about?
definitely.
But what
Yeah.
about? But what about? And then if you expand that, it's not even the stuff they lose, but people have a good idea of what they need. Like, but what about a checking account?
Right. Yeah.
But what about this other thing? But I can tell you, and I'm sure you see it too, is the amount of energy coming in to serve that is unbelievable. Like there's
Yeah.
billions being spent here.
Yeah.
Um, there's questions in the chat, and we only have about 3 more minutes, so I'm gonna cherry pick a couple and see what comes out. Excuse me. So one of the questions was, um, let's see here. Let's see. How do you justify part-time work over the lofty benefits from full-time work if you do not ramp up quickly with enough cash flow? Okay, so this person's talking about, listen, you're at some sort, as I talk about at the bridge. The left side of the bridge is a W-2, the right side is fractional. Like one has benefits, one doesn't. How do you justify that part-time thing? Well, how might you answer that?
Um, I guess my answer, it's not a direct answer, but it's, doing fractional work is riskier than a full-time job in at least a lot of ways, although we could probably argue that. It definitely feels riskier. I think overall it is riskier. And so you have to be comfortable with that risk. And you have to be comfortable, especially with early on, your total compensation and, it's going to be less and you're going to face other challenges. And like, which is why doing fractional work is a type of business. You are now a business owner, right? And so when you start a company of any kind, you're going to be taking risk. There is going to be downside, and not everyone's going to make it, frankly. And it just so maybe the solution is like to accept that and to understand you're taking a risk and to price that in, if you will, to your decision
Hmm.
matrix. Because there's no I mean, there are ways you can kind of transition slowly out of full-time W-2 into fractional. So it's not like you have to jump over the river, but yeah, it just kind of there is more risk involved.
You have to it's different math on both sides. This will be the last thing, but the one thing that we're seeing at scale right now is if you're over 45, going back into W-2 seems like the hardest thing I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah, that resonates for sure. Yeah,
So on the one hand, you go, well, it's a little riskier going fractional. Well, not comparing to W-2 if you can't get a freaking job. I got
right.
people in the program that are well over a year in search that are constantly ghosted. You know what I think the biggest problem with all that is? I think it's the feedback loop they're getting. Like when you're in the job search, like you're getting ghosted, you're getting diminished, you're being ghosted again, time passes, there's no revenue coming. Like there's no positive feedback loop in that. I
Yeah,
think it's terrible. So,
totally.
wow, Taylor, this has been amazing. I can't believe an hour passed this fast. It went amazingly fast. I can't thank you enough for joining us today and lending your expertise and your knowledge and your lens. I know the people listening appreciate it. Those on the podcast are going to appreciate it. Really grateful for your time today. Thank you very, very much. Any parting thoughts from your world, Taylor, on what fractional people should be thinking about?
Parting thoughts. Thank you all for tuning in. For those that joined, if I didn't get a chance to answer your question, I really only got to answer like one or so. Feel free to shoot me an email or a LinkedIn DM. I'm happy to answer your specific questions there. That's it.
Stay on the path. Stay on the path. Thank you, Taylor, so much. We'll close it down for the day. Thank you, everybody, for coming. You can find us all online and look for the links in the chat, and this will be posted again later next week. Stay on the fractional path. If 60% of us are going to be that way, might as well start that path now. So thank you, Taylor. We'll see you again soon.